I turn my head over, he turns his head over, and we're looking, and there's these, the only way I can describe them, I say they're like red mixture with orange and amber type of eyes, glowing. And they're like, I swear, almost 9 feet in the air. And then I can see, even though it's dark, I can see this shape.
Welcome to Creepalachia, fun-filled episode today. We have Richie Acevado. Acevedo in the studio. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk Bigfoot. We're going to talk filmmaking. We may even talk some New River Gorge stuff of an experience that Richie has went through. But thanks for joining us today, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
So, kind of give the audience some background on you, where you live, what you do for a living, all that good stuff.
I live in Oak Hill, West Virginia. I was born in Patterson, New Jersey. I'm a second-generation pro wrestler. My dad was a pro wrestler. He was the original Cuban assassin, who most people may know him better from the Hart family, Calgary Stampede Wrestling, and over in the East Coast of Canada for Emile Dupree's Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling. I took over his name because I look identical to him, and everything. And I've wrestled for 35 years, and I'm just retired from pro wrestling in November of last year. Of course, even though I'm Cuban assassin, the actual son of the Cuban assassin, but there was a Cuban assassin before me, which is, he still wrestles today. His name is Acevedo Sierra, and he was the one that everybody would mainly know from WCW, World Championship Wrestling.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember hearing about the Cuban assassin. Yeah, wrestling too. We've got tons of wrestling talk coming up, which I love. Mm-hmm. I was a huge fan of the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
And when NWO was in WCW and all that good stuff. So I'm very, very excited.
Well, NWO was considered the Attitude Era.
Well, yeah, it was around the same time, and they was kind of...
Well, you had people rooting for the bad guys and booing the good guys during that time period. And that's why it's called the Attitude Era, because there's a bunch of young kids, that's growing up and coming from adolescence, and they kind of bunk the authority.
Did you watch that Vince McMahon documentary on Netflix?
Did.
Oh man, I've watched it like 10 times.
Yeah, but you have to understand, and I'll be the first one to tell people this about pro wrestlers. Majority of what we say is truth, but there's kind of, when you're a wrestler and you're so trained to do promos and to do interviews, and you're trained to play a character, and your character is like, my character was the Cuban assassin, and like, same as my dad. But like when someone's meeting Ric Flair, we understand that the fans don't see us as people, when they come up and meet me, they find I'm a wrestler, they're not going to meet me as Richie Acevedo. They're going to meet me as the Cuban assassin, because that's what they see. As a matter of fact, some fans will call me Cuban or Mr. Assassin, like that's my actual last name to them, because to them, the character is real and the man is a myth.
Yeah.
So I tell everybody that it's kind of like a Clark Kent kind of life. We put the glasses on, we're just mild mannered Clark Kent, and no one pays no mind to us. And then we take it off and we're some character. And I call that the Clark Kent kind of experience, because when people meet Mark Calloway, and I don't know if you know who he is, you probably do, but to wrestling fans, he's the Undertaker. And when people meet him, they're like Mr. Taker, like Taker is his last name. So the character is real, and Mark is a
and
myth.
He was notorious for holding character like wherever he went.
He was old school trained, and he come from an old school thing, and he knew for him to really make that character believable, that he had to push kayfabe, is the word we use.
Kayfabe, yeah.
He had to push the kayfabe as much as possible for that character. And mind you, he was the one guy who was staying kayfabe through his whole career while the wrestling industry was changing, because he just came from WCW, World Championship Wrestling, is Mark Callis, and the American Badass is actually him being Mark Callis.
Oh wow,
that's what that was. And
yeah, he did transfer to like this Harley Davidson type.
It was more up to Mark Callis. He was trying to combine the two, and and kind of put more of himself as to the character. But of course, the fans just like the dead man more than any of that persona. But but at least Mark was smart enough to be like Sting, and that's what a lot of people always wish they would see, which they did wrestle, but not as the Crow Sting and not as the Undertaker. They wrestled in WCW as me, Mark Callis, and the old what I would call the '80s punk style Sting or surfer Sting, and
the one with the blonde hair and the colorful. It kind of had the Ultimate Warrior vibes.
Well, they were partners. They started out together.
Oh, were they?
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Jim Hellwig, which is now known as the Warrior or Ultimate Warrior. Sting. They started off together. They were were bodybuilders together, and they were two other guys. I think they were called Team USA Pro or Pro USA, and Sting and Jim got booked for Memphis because they were they liked their looks, and they were a team, and they became known as the Blade Runners.
Right. And
the Blade Runners was UWF's, which is same as Mid South Wrestling, rip-off version of the Road Warriors, because once you have a good product out there, then everybody rips them off. Just like
did look like
just like Rock and Roll Express. After when Rock and Roll Express was going on, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, all of a sudden you had Shawn Michaels, Mark Jannetty, and AWA going as the Midnight Rockers. Then later on WWF, just the Rockers, and Midnight Rockers is just kind of combining Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express, because they were a package deal, and they were created for each other.
Right.
Actually, and that's true. They were really created for each other, and then that's why they're the greatest tag team rivalry in wrestling history, Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah.
And
was that as the 80s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and the Rock and Roll Express started in Memphis, and then of course you had the Rock and Roll RPMs, which is another ripoff, which World Class had them. And then you had, you can also kind of look at the British Bulldogs for Vince McMahon is another ripoff of the Rock and Roll Express, but doing it in a different style. And, but yeah, I mean, you had Road Warriors, you had Powers of Pain, you had the Blade Runners, you had Kevin Nash was part of a generic one that didn't last long, the Road Blasters.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was one of his first character. He was called Nitro. And coincidentally, that would become the name of the TV show that would be the competition for Monday Night Raw, Monday Nitro.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So, and was that right before him and Razor Ramon kind of?
Okay. Yeah. Scott Hall was, he started off, and he was in NWA, which later on people would, Ted Turner would buy them and become WCW, which wasn't the NWA. They bought NWA, Jim Crockett, Mid-Atlantic.
That was during the territory days?
Yes, right.
Okay.
And he was he was tag team with Dan Spivey. And him and Dan Spivey were called was called Starship Yar. They were trying to be these futuristic like type, because at that time period, these sci-fi movies were being the big hits at the box office because of Star Wars. It did a chain of reaction of all these other movies like Battle Beyond the Stars and like Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone.
Right.
Those type of movies. And all of a sudden they kind of got that idea, try to make them more like these futuristic type of men. And then Scott Hall would get booked for AWA and then become Scott Hall, which he would get polished more there under the tutorship of Vern Gagne. Vern Gagne had a unique act of polishing wrestlers. He even polished Hulk Hogan. See, if you
Ric Flair?
Ric Flair started in AWA. He trained under Vern Gagne.
Yeah. But
Ric Flair surpassed everything that Vern Gagne would have ever done. Ric Flair, in my personal opinion, is the greatest pro wrestler in history.
Oh, he's the best.
To me.
He transcended cultures.
Well, not only that, but he was, even though he combined a couple of characters together, and people don't realize that he stole the moniker name Nature Boy from Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. Even dressing up in the suit and all that was Buddy Rogers too. But the colorful robes, that came from Gorgeous George, which Gorgeous George was the very first TV character and the innovator of every character from that moment on out.
Oh, wow. Period.
Anything people does, it always emulates back to Gorgeous George. As a matter of fact, if you watch wrestling today, Seth freaking Rollins if Gorgeous George was alive today, he'd be so happy because Seth is doing everything that Gorgeous George started and emulating him. So it shows Seth's how smart Seth is in researching his history.
Man, well, we can get sweaty in wrestling.
Yeah.
This is I'm like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, but Scott Hall would later on go to WCW and as the Diamond Stud, and they teamed him up with Diamond Dallas Page, which Diamond Dallas Page was managing Kevin Nash, because after Road Blaster Nitro, Kevin Nash would become Oz, and after Oz, he would become Benny Vegas, and then he would get to WWF, World Wrestling Federation, then because of Shawn Michaels.
Oh yeah, wow.
And then he became Big Daddy Cool Diesel, and then when he came back to WCW, he used his name Kevin Nash, and then Scott Hall used his name. But after he left as Diamond Stud, he went to WWF 2 and became Razor Ramon after his favorite movie, which is Scarface from Al Pacino.
Oh yeah. So he was Razor Ramon in WCW.
No, he was the Diamond Stud,
because they sued WCW over him, right?
Well,
because they said that he was reenacting the character they created.
They were emulating the characters. They were making it look like it was a WWF invasion, and that was exactly what their plan was.
The Outsiders.
Yeah. But you know whose idea that really was for a brand on brand battling competition? That came from Greg Gagne, Vern Gagne's son, because he was working in WCW at that time, and because when Eric Bischoff got in the office, he wanted to have this thing going on and try to come up with something, and he suggested to him why don't you do this? Why don't you talk to my dad and buy the AWA, and that way you can have the AWA World Champion and have the NWA or WCW World Champion, and you can have two talent rosters separate, which Vince McMahon was still that idea with SmackDown and Raw. And to be able to have your big event like Starrcade for them, and you have their main guys and their main guys, and you can always have them try to invade and cross promotion, because it was an idea that Eric Bischoff stole from Japan that they were doing at the time over in Japan.
Right.
And all those Japanese wrestlers would end up going to WCW under Eric Bischoff, the ones that were doing that whole invasion angle, one Japanese company to another. And that's where Eric Bischoff got the idea, but he wanted something bigger. And then Vern suggested that, but then the idea kind of rolled differently when you talked to Hulk Hogan, and that turned into let's do this NWA, like this New World Order takeover thing. And that's what they went with.
Wow. Well, you are a catalog of wrestling info. We'll come back to that. So Bigfoot.
Yes.
This is kind of where we started. You mentioned having a Bigfoot experience.
Oh, I had a Bigfoot encounter, not just an experience. It is an experience. And I'm going to tell people, when you have a Bigfoot encounter, a Bigfoot experience, it's something that is with you for the rest of your life. I mean, it becomes a part of you as you go through life. I'll explain it here in a second.
Yeah. Go ahead and lay out the scene of where you were.
When I was a kid, and I was in elementary school in 4th grade, and my mom, my aunt talked to my mom about sending my sister and I to a church camp they had going on. And church camp, I think, is about 2 weeks of what it was over there. I'm not sure where it's at. I want to say it's somewhere over in Hinton. I always felt it was north, but as I look forward today, I think it's more towards Hinton, because when you're young and you're traveling in a vehicle, it seems like a simple hour drive seems like a infinity to a young child.
Eternity, yeah.
And then, but we was at a church camp, and all these different kids and stuff. And to describe this church camp, it's weird. I mean, it had like this gravel road that you come into, and it had this nice, looked like a house, but it's actually for church services and where they do functions and stuff. Then it had this canopy. They had this like softball field and the big field too, beside it. And then they had this canopy with picnic tables where we ate breakfast, lunch, and everything. And then you had cabins over here on the side of the road here, and there was a bathhouse, which was also the restroom facility for all the boys, and a couple cabins for the boys. And they had this one big on the side of the hill red cabin. All the buildings were red except for the one white building there, and the big red building was where the girls were, and they had the restroom facility and showers inside that building. And then you had these little gravel pathways like for like a sidewalk.
Sure, yeah.
And then had these little lamp posts, light posts, but it kind of reminds you if you watch the old Friday the 13th movie, Camp Crystal Lake, got that little wire string with that little flask flat light fixture and a little light bulb that blinks in and out that hardly gives any illumination at all. That's what those lights were. And at nighttime, it's freaking dark,
terrifying.
Oh yeah, for any kid, definitely. And then, but in the boys' cabins, we had bunks, but they called them bunks, but they wasn't bunks. They were just beds, and they're like you had a divider in the center, and you had two flat beds here, and then one kid's on this side, one kid's. But then across from this bed here's another same cubicle, kind of like benches that you sit in a restaurant, but you lay on them as beds.
Yep.
And then they and your bunkmate, the rule is if you had to go use the restroom, you had to wake your bunkmate up. Then both of you had to wake up the counselor in the cabin. Each cabin had a counselor. He would give you a flashlight because you had to let him know that you got to go use the restroom. You get a flashlight. Then you both go together. You had to always numbers,
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, the girls didn't have to do that because their facilities was inside one building.
How old are you at this time?
I was around 9 or 10 years old.
Cool.
And then we, one night, my bunkmate, I'll say his first name, but I'm not going to mention his last name. And that's for the reasons because I don't want him to, because this experience was traumatizing to him more than it was to me. But Danny is his first name. And he and I, we really became good friends from that thing. Of course, we had something that we're stuck together for the rest of our lives. He wakes me and says he has to go use the restroom. So I get up and, we go wake up the camp counselor and he gives us a flashlight. So I'm walking in the pathway with the flashlight. Danny's behind me. And all of a sudden this little rock comes whizzing by my ear from behind me and lands in front of me. And I'm like, Danny, I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm not doing anything. Another rock comes flying by me. And I was like, Danny, would you please stop doing that? That's, you don't need to try to scare me. It's not working, And cause everybody always pick on each other and especially kids, And he's like, I'm not doing anything. And all of a sudden this nice, good sized rock come right by. Just whiz right by my ear. Didn't even, like real close, like almost getting ready to hit me. And it landed right in front of me. I turned around. I was like, Danny, what are you doing? He's like, I'm not doing anything, man. I was like, well, stop whatever you're doing. I don't care. You're not going to scare me. Let's just go use the restroom and get back to the cabin. It's cold. And then, so we go to the restroom. Both of us use the restroom. We're walking back. And all of a sudden I hear, whoo. And I was like, Danny, stop it. I'm tired. I just want to go back to sleep. And I hear, whoo, again. And then all of a sudden I was like, Danny, please, I don't know why you're trying to scare me. And Danny's like, I'm not doing anything, man. And I turned around and had a flashlight on him. I was like, you need to stop trying to scare me. It's not working. And when I said that, and mind you, this is in between the cabins here. At this point, we're standing in between two, and it's quite a bit of distance between the cabins and it's dark. And as soon as I was sitting there telling him that, all of a sudden, and I swear, and the only thing I can describe this has got to be infrasound. I don't know if you know what infrasound is. It's certain.
I do not.
It is a sound that certain animals make that causes an effect in your mind and causes you to automatically be in fear. Like certain type of cats will make a big yell, scream, and without you knowing, all of a sudden you start. It causes a trigger effect because it does an infrasound that you hear that you don't realize you're hearing is causing a reaction. And a lot of Bigfoot researchers believe that Bigfoot has the capability to do infrasound. And I'll tell you something about that here in just a second. But this is the only way I can describe it, because when the next whoop goes, whoo, real big, and I can feel the reverberation, and I literally can feel like the breath on my face, like it's like something's right here. And then I turn my head over, he turns his head over, and we're looking, and there's these, and the only way I can describe them, I say they're like red mixture with orange and amber type of eyes, glowing, and they're all like I swear, almost 9 feet in the air. And then I can see, even though it's dark, I can see the shape of like a chrome top, like a kind of a peak, like something like this on top of the head. And you can see a big facial structure, and you can see massive shoulders, massive arms, long arms, big old hands. And you can see these long muscular legs, and big feet. And you can, it just had hair, but you can see the definition. This is in the dark. And the eyes, and I kept focusing on the eyes. And at that time, Danny screams and says, "Bear," and runs. I'm still in awe of this and kind of focused on its eyes. And I'm sitting there, I know what I'm seeing is a Bigfoot, because of the TV shows and everything at that time. There was still a young, fresh start, because Bigfoot mania started in the 70s because of two things. One was Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of, and the other thing was Andre the Giant playing Bigfoot on the $6 Million Man TV series.
Well, the Patterson-Gimlin film, too?
The Patterson-Gimlin was 1967.
Gotcha.
But Bigfoot mania, like after the $6 Million Man and In Search Of, then that's where you had all your merchandising and all this Bigfoot mania coming in the 1970s, because the culture was changing. Because you had Star Wars and Jaws in 1976 and 77, Star Wars, and the culture was changing just from those dynamics alone. And then culture was just completely changing. And because you still had a disco, we just came out of the disco phase at that time, and being in 1980, this is culture's changing completely. It's a total culture change and everything. And, but I was in all of that. And I tell people, I try to explain this to them. It's almost like that creature in my mind were one and the same. I mean, literally, like we were conjointed. It knew what I was thinking, and I knew what it was thinking. It was thinking
chicken nuggets.
Well, no, it was thinking, how can I see it?
Right.
I actually felt that's what it was.
Oh, wow.
Thinking, how am I able to see it? And then I'm thinking to myself, and it knows what I'm thinking, because it's almost like having a brief conversation here for a brief second. How is this even real?
Yeah.
I thought this was just Hollywood movies, TV. And
were you terrified? Like, how did you?
No, I wasn't terrified. I was more in awe.
Yeah.
Like a deer in headlights awe moment. And then all of a sudden I just turned to go run. But here's the funny thing. And as I remember it back, and it's weird because everything's like regular motion, moving and everything, how I remember it, until that moment when I go to run, it feels like I'm moving in slow motion, how my memory goes. It's like I'm moving, like I'm running in very slow motion. And I feel like I'm in some type of, the sound sounds like I'm in a tunnel. Like I'm like some kind of tunnel, like you can hear air flowing through something, and it's kind of weird. It's just almost the best thing I can describe it. If you dunk your head underwater and you hear people talking, but you hear them talking from the sound, what sounds like underwater. Right. That's what sounded like to me at that moment. But I was moving real slow, and like I'm running as hard as I can, and I'm running real slow. By the time I get to the cabin door and I open the cabin door, it's like it didn't push me. It's like something pushed me with momentum and shoved me through the door. And then I landed on my feet, and I was trying to get myself up, and I was miscombobulated, and I felt nauseous, like I was going to throw up. And I was, felt like I was so confused. Like for a moment, in that moment, I felt like I didn't exist. That's how I felt. Like
wow.
I no
was
longer.
Was it like an adrenaline rush, or?
Here's what I think, and this is why I try to explain to people that this is why I always try to tell anybody. I tell squatchers, if you're going out there, you need to forget the primate stuff, and I tell them, think about this. These creatures are intelligent, highly intelligent, and they have capabilities that are supernatural. that we would perceive as supernatural. So I try to tell them, I felt like the way I can describe it is these things, the way they move is they're able to travel interdimensionally. And I felt like I was part of that interdimensional plane. And that's why I felt like I was part of its radius. Like, think of it as a force field around yourself.
Right.
And think of the creature having a force field. I was kind of in that force field. Wow. And if you look at research about people, you find out that people get disoriented, confused, and get lost in the woods, even though they've been there a million times, but they're completely lost. I think this comes from that field that's around them, and they're able to use that to travel interdimensionally. That's why when you follow their footprints, they come to an abrupt end, and you don't see them anymore. They have the capability to make themselves invisible to the naked eye, just like predators. Matter of fact, I believe the guys who create the Predator movie is based upon the Bigfoot, and they can make themselves look like shadow people, and they can make themselves look like something else. So if you happen to see them, they have the choice to how they want you to see them. But sometimes, every now and then, some of us as human beings have some type of DNA trait in us that causes us to have certain abilities. And people might call them psychics or sensitives or mediums. And I believe that everybody has this ability. I've always had this ability of some type of remote viewing. And I think after this Bigfoot encounter, it increased dramatically. Like,
remote viewing, explain that to people who may not have heard that.
Okay, remote viewing is like you can sit and you can close your eyes, and you can also do it with your eyes open, but you're seeing images and seeing a different place of other people, images and things.
Kind of like you turn on a security camera.
Right. Now, there's the military remote viewing, and then there's regular remote viewing. And regular remote viewing is being more what people would perceive you as a psychic. And I think most psychics are remote viewers. They're actually remote viewing, and it's easier to see in the past of things that already had come and happened when you remote view as it is going to the future, because the future is still being redefined by actions, emotions, and everything that happens. So, and then we're kind of parallel with another parallel, couple of them actually, like bands. I always say it's frequency, that we're in a frequency, and that we have, because everything vibrates. We know everything has a frequency. Your body, all of it, everything, your mind, your brain has a frequency wave. That's why they call them brain waves, and it's frequency. And Nikola Tesla always said that the secret of the universe is frequency. All right. And I always tell people it's frequency, like your radio tuning in and out. And sometimes you can tune in and out, and that's what remote viewing is. You're tuning in, tuning out, tuning in, tuning out.
It's like a DVR.
Yes, in a way. And like a security camera, like you said, you're getting glimpses and images. And then that's what remote viewing is. And then, but I was able to do certain type of remote viewings, like,
after this?
Before. And then after this, it increased. Like after this experience, after I felt when I was in that dimensional field, it caused more, what I would like to say, I became more aware. Not that any abilities get, you become more aware, because in all honesty, all the psychic medium fields is nothing but of a broader consciousness. You're in tune of your broader conscious self, and you're in tune with a broader consciousness. And what I try to tell people is they have to understand that space itself is nothing but vast. Space is nothing but one consciousness. And we're all from that, and we're all in tune to that. And it's kind of like remote control, that we're in these little vehicles we call these biological machines that we call bodies. And we're here for an experience, and to get to that dimensional plane level, to go back to be with the one with the source, one with God, if you want to use that. But we all want to go back home.
Yeah.
And
energy never dies, like science knows.
No, it just transforms.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if we didn't learn the lessons we supposed to learn, we repeat and come back again, because I also have memories from a past life, even when I was a kid, but that's what some of my remote viewing comes from. But when I was doing after that Bigfoot encounter, the experience, and I didn't want to talk about it for a long time because when I tried to explain to people, they'd look at you crazy back then. It's different today.
People are more accepting.
Well, people are more open and more conscious. See, we're getting to become more conscious about things. So now people can see lies. If someone's lying to you, you almost know that someone's lying to you now. And it comes from everybody because everybody does lie. And anyone who says they don't lie, they're lying. You know, I mean, we all lie. We exaggerate. We all lie.
And they could mean well in their lie. Like, no, you look great in that dress or whatever.
Well, some stuff's is subconscious.
Right.
Sometimes you're not even realize that you're adding more because people, this is why I say they should never have allow eyewitness accounts. Matter of fact, I think a lot of the forensic science is pseudoscience, except for DNA. I think the DNA fingerprints is the only true forensic science you can have, besides having the murder weapon, the blood, and that type of stuff. Because a lot of people are wrongfully convicted today because of what I call pseudoscience, the forensic science, pseudoscience. And when it comes to the DNA, I mean, just look, the Jack the Ripper, for example, they supposedly say that they did DNA testing on a scarf that was one that from one of the victims, and it come to be one of the suspects that they had suspected.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, I try to tell people on this because I studied that, research all those, the Jack the Ripper, the Zodiac, and I tell people the biggest problem out of those two cases is the letters. And I don't know why everybody wants to accept letters. Okay, anybody can write a letter. Okay, and if you discard the letters in both these cases and go by the actual evidence that you have at hand, and go by what's given to you by the actual evidence, you will see that the Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac is I believe that Jack the Ripper is actually two different killers, and this is just one of them. And for them all they got's one scar from one woman. Okay. Now you say, you know, definitively he's got to be the guy that killed her, but it doesn't mean he killed all the other ones, because the first two girls that were murdered, that were similar. But when it came to the third girl, that girl's MO is completely different from the first two and from the one that he took the scarf from. Because that third girl MO, her body, they say that he was interrupted. Maybe interrupted. That's presumed interrupted. Someone else probably could have killed her, and why he was already killing this other woman, because the timing of those two women is impeccable. I mean, you can try to simulate; it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So and you're during that time period in the 1800s over in London, there was a lot of prostitution. And what happens with serial killers today? Prostitutes are the easiest prey for them to go after, and it's like people.
Always have been.
People look at prostitutes in a bad way, and they shouldn't. They're human beings and they're people. And
world's oldest profession.
It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
And then, but I think there's two killers in Jack the Ripper case, and then the Zodiac. I think, and this is discarding the letters. Screw the letters. I think they need to stop that. Like, you shouldn't just take someone's confession word of hand, because we know there's false confessions. Now we also know you can be forced to give a false confession too.
Oh yeah, people are flawed.
Yeah, well, everybody's a human being.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have that. And then I'm like, but in the Zodiac, to me, if you look at the evidence separate, the first two killings are the first two incidents, because there's a boy and a girl, then the one girl. These two are done by one killer. If you look at the pattern, look at the evidence at hand, because the thing started before letters. It was phone calls. Letters didn't come until after. And if you look at the letters, then you've seen from the first original 4 or 5 letters, and then it goes to the next set of letters, it's almost like it's two different people.
Right.
Okay. So, but that's why I said discard the letters. The third killing at Lake Berryessa was done in broad daylight and done by stabbing instead of guns.
That one's awful.
Okay. That to me is a copycat. That's a different killer. And he used a Zodiac hood and everything to throw it off. And no letters were sent. He did he took a marker and drew on the car door and just put the dates of the other killings. Okay. And the date of that.
Was there no letter with that one?
No, that was the only one that didn't have a letter. Okay. Oh. See, so you start seeing the MOs change on this. instead of going from night, it's now day. Instead of going from shooting, it's a knife stabbing. And instead of being mysterious in the dark, now the person's got a hood on and using the sign. I think that guy's a copycat killer.
Mm-hmm.
The guy in the cab, again, MO changes again, but now it goes back to the gun, which is the same caliber as the first two, which why they think those are connected. But that doesn't mean they're connected. It's just the same caliber.
Sure.
Without the actual gun and the actual shells, you will never be able to connect that to say that's the actual murder weapon.
Right.
All right. I think that and the MO, he killed a taxi cab driver. This guy did, and shot him. And he did something unusual. He took a piece of the fabric and was cleaning off the door handle of the driver's side, which he never touched. So, and he did that for a point to be seen because he knew he was being watched. All right. And he walked by the police officers that were on the way to investigate that when it was called in. He actually talked to them police officers. And I think he was the guy who wrote the new set of letters. And I think he was just copycatting again, another copycat, because the MO is different. This time it's just one man. And instead of being a young couple. And of course, it's just weird how these killers the serial killers, and this is something I don't understand. It's like these serial killers, when they kill, they're so close to around each other. They're so close. And I think it becomes a competition to them. And I think that when another serial killer, it bothers them, and I'm thinking, you look at other murders before that, I'm thinking that the copycat killer, like Berryessa, killed a student beforehand, stabbed her and everything, because the MO there fits completely with that MO.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I think the killer from the first two killings killed sometime for a couple times because the MO looks the same in that. It's completely, identical. Then I think the fifth killer, that guy there is the more artistic type of killer, because it seems like in his letters, he's very artistic, and the ciphers are, the cipher is almost designed to be decoded by different type of people, and you're going to get a different result.
Yeah. A teacher decoded the first one from
two
which
teachers.
I remember. Yeah.
Two teachers, and they couldn't decode the other half of the cipher though.
Mm-hmm.
But a woman did. As a matter of fact, the woman decoded all of them, but she saw more into it. And I can't think of her name right off bat, but she's got a YouTube channel, and I think she's pretty close. And I think she knows. Who killed the cab driver, and she's got that one packed.
Is there some or ciphers that haven't been decoded yet?
Well,
it seems like there may be one or two that haven't.
I have to send it to you later on so you can investigate yourself. And I tell people, don't go by what I say. Do your own research. Because it's left up to the interpreter.
There's a good documentary on Netflix that just released last year. It goes through, and it walks through some kids talking about, it seemed like their stepdad or something, or teacher.
Yeah,
that used to take them on car rides.
That's Arthur Lee Allen.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other guy that I think that did the Lake Berryessa was I think his name was Lawrence. And he went by other aliases, but he committed murders and crimes in Bada too.
Mm.
Okay. And I think he also is the one who killed that college girl years before. And then I can't remember her name off the bat, but and I think it's that girl that went through the ciphers, figured out who the killer was, and the cab driver. And I think his name was Xenophone. I can't remember his last name, but it was Xenophone was his name, and he put his signature and everything with the X. The crossbones were the X, and that's his signature for his name for Xenophone, because it starts with an X.
Oh wow. Yeah,
and I think she solved it, and he was a very masterful guy and likes to play games and hid messages within messages. And the cipher itself was a cipher, but the letters and the cards and everything, they all go together with numbers and everything. And I have to send it to you, the videos that she's done, and she shows the evidence and how she proves this.
Yeah.
And I think she's spot on, and I agree with her. But I think it's 3 killers for the Zodiac on the cases they're presenting, and I think the Jack the Ripper is 2.
Wow. Heard it here first. Creepalachia. We have solved it.
Well,
I feel like I need to reinstate my medical marijuana card for this episode.
But let's get back to the Bigfoot real quick.
Yeah. So we got into remote viewing, and then from there.
Yeah, and as I got older, and mind you, I was having dreams from that moment on. But before that, let me get to this. We're still at church camp.
Sure. Yeah.
At that same time of that night, since Danny and I were the only ones out, okay, these camp counselors came to us the next day and wanted to talk to us and took us to the girls' cabin on the backside. And their cabin kind of sits on a hill. And the back part of the building is on a hill, but it's really tall.
Right.
And they asked me, how do we do it? And Danny and I looking at each other, what are they talking about? Do what? And they said, how'd you do it? And we're looking at each other, do what? And they point out on the side of the building, there's these scratches on the side of the building. And it's way up there. And I'm sitting there looking at that, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, you guys really think that Danny and I did that?
And you're how tall are you? 4 foot tall?
Yeah, we're just kids.
Yeah.
9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why do you think we did it? And they're like, well, you're the only two that was out last night. I said, well, we saw something. When we go to talk about it, and then when Danny goes, he starts shaking. I mean, you can see fear, but he wouldn't go past saying it wasn't. He kept saying it was a bear. And he says that he saw a bear, and he won't go any further than that. And I tried to tell them what I saw, and they just thought I was making it up. Kids, they think kids make things up, and they should really listen to kids more often. But I told the camp counselor, I said, well, let me ask you this. Even if I was standing on his shoulder and he was standing on mine, there's no way we can reach that. No way we could reach that. So, how do you think that we're the ones that did it? So they just sat around and looked at us, because Danny and I didn't know that was going on. And my sister told me, because she went to the same church camp, and she was in the girls, and she told me there was a bear outside scratching. No bear is that gigantic. Even if you take a Kodiak bear, which wouldn't be here in West Virginia, Kodiaks only exist up in Alaska. The largest bear is the polar bear. So, they're not here. We have black bears in West Virginia, and they're not. And the biggest black bear that stands up is not that tall, And this thing was way up there. Then I started thinking the creature I saw, the Bigfoot I saw, had long arms and big hands. And I mean, that's one thing that sticks out. But after the church camp, I would have these dreams of this creature talking to me. But it's weird, because I would be out in the woods, and it's not always the same woods, like in my dream. And I had this dream until I was 15. And I think what happened is adolescence kicked in, hormones, and your body chemistry changes. So, but I felt this thing was talking to me and telling me that I had nothing to worry about. They know who we are. They know who I am. And, it's telling me that we have nothing to worry about. I think they're waiting for communication, actual communication, but it's got to be done right. Because they know that man is the most destructive and most violent creature in this world, even more so than they are. And they have encounters over past, between man. They have attacked men before because, they were in fear. And, but they have abilities, and their strength is enormous. I can tell you that now. But this creature's told me also that I was going to go through life not to worry, but there would be, the way it said would be obstacles, hurdles, but not to worry, that I will be fine. And to remember that. It wanted me to remember that I will be fine. And it wanted me to know there it wasn't mean no harm whatsoever. This thing was speaking to me, in dreams, and not that I was scared. It wasn't like a nightmare. It was like a meeting, except the dream is weird because I'll be in different woods, different places, and when I look over, I'll see it. Then they'll be gone, and they'll be someplace else, and in the dream, and it almost like it was showing me different places that it is at. And when it says it's in different places, it literally means in places. We can't be at the same place as human beings at the same time. Okay. They can. Matter of fact, they can be in one place and be in another location completely so far away. But there's different species of them. There's a lot of them. There's different species, or different types of species. Sometimes they end up having to face each other, just like we have different colors and creeds ourselves. They do too. They also do that, but they all have that same ability. And then there's another species out there that we call ferals, which are the wild men, which are basically two different things. It's our ancestors, that are like cavemen-like style, incredibly strong, and it's got DNA trait from like Neanderthal type of abilities, and they themselves, some human beings, like a pig, can go feral if it runs loose in the woods and stuff. The DNA will revert to itself when it goes into a wild boar and grows to the big tooths out, and then the hair and gets incredibly large. Mm-hmm. Well, some DNA in human beings can cause that too. Some people in the survival mechanism kick in. Some people can survive. Most people will die, but there are a few that goes feral, and they will grow long hair. They will grow hair. They will get enlarge, strong. Because people don't realize if our great great grandparents was here alive, and saw how hard it is for you to lift weights in the next room, they'll laugh at you, because they had to help pick up horse carriages,
right,
and wagons, and put on heavy. I don't know if anybody ever picked up a wagon wheel before. It's pretty daggone.
And they
heavy.
Were more malnourished.
Yeah, they were
typically.
Well, they wasn't malnourished. I think they were more nourished than we are. I think.
Well, there was less food to eat, but it was healthier.
Right.
Yeah.
And their bodies are designed for that time in that period. So they had to swing large hammers. Their hammers back. See, history's got things all messed up sometimes, and they do that intentionally, because the sledgehammers back then were much bigger and heavier than with the sledgehammers as they went along time. The reason why they got smaller, the tools got smaller, is because we were no longer strong enough to hold them or yield them or swing them.
Right.
Okay. And their bodies were designed for it. A man's body back then was completely structured for that type of labor. As time changed, technology changes, man gets weaker.
Now we're structured for the couch.
We're structured. we're evolving, and we're structuring for to be part of a broader consciousness.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Soon, and I say soon for most people is like now, but soon could be a long time. But soon we will evolve, and we will be more of our energy selves, our more conscious selves, and you're going to see a different world here. As a matter of fact, we're going to be seeing a lot of change as everything goes along. I can tell you that right now. And Donald Trump is the predecessor. He's in his second term is what they call the second Trump, or the second sound of the trumpet. And we got one more to come, and it won't be Donald Trump. So I figure it'd be Barron. And I always tell people, when you really want to know when to get prepared or when to worry, if you want to worry, but worrying is going to be the last thing you need to worry about. Everything will be fine. And people just have a fear because they got stuck to this thing that we call life. And it's not life, it's an experience. We're here for like a thrill ride. And
yeah, well, you're talking about we're kind of evolving into, I think that's why aliens kind of have the shape they do, is they eventually don't have need for all of this muscle. they kind of figure out like, well, we can kind of do things a little easier.
Well, aliens, I'll tell you that too, because I've had UFO experiences too. I've also been in 3 different places that had paranormal activity. I'm not scared to go into a house that has a lot of that, because there's nothing to really be afraid of. We have more control in this domain than they do. Yes, there's a lot of them that can get stronger and stronger, and it feeds off our energy because we're like batteries, right? And they can constantly feed. But the thing is that's unique about us, we can recharge if you have the right aptitude and right ability.
Sleep.
Well, no, we recharge in different ways. I mean, look at Trump. He hardly ever sleeps. I mean, we came from a president that did nothing but sleep to a president who never sleeps all of a sudden. And that's because he's a workaholic. And I try to explain to people, real work, there's different types of workaholics, but manual labor is totally different from what he does. He's a thinker. This runs up here constantly in his mind. He's always thinking, he's always working, he's always up, he's always coming up with things and trying to find out this, trying to find out. He's a researcher too, you know. He became a billionaire for a reason, and people need to understand that, you know. And he as far as politics, he don't see politics as politics. He sees everything as a business, and that's what he's doing. He's running a business. And the title President of the United States is actually a title of corporation. Like if you have your LLC, you're the president, right? You're the president of a company, or you have a CEO beneath you, you know, chief executive officer, which you can say is a vice president. Now, we kind of adopted this from the Spartans. You know that, right? That's why they say 300. Leonidas and the Brave 300 was the birth of democracy, because they had 2 kings. And the kings wasn't by bloodline; they were elected, chosen. Okay, and we use that same format. And the reason why I had 2 sitting kings, because one king ruled, the second king was there when he needed to leave and take care, because that king went to war all the time with his soldiers. And if something happened to him, well, he always got another king.
Right.
So president, vice president.
Sure. No, yeah, I know what you're saying. So you was talking about UFOs. I guess we might as well talk about that.
We can do that.
I mean,
I'll tell you that experience too.
What happened?
When we was living in Collinwood Acres, and I lived at lot 43, and it's kind of a hill, goes down to our trailer was the last one on the left. On top of the hill, me and my friends were riding our bikes, and we stopped top the hill. And I happened to glance over, and I happened to see this same color as the Bigfoot eyes, same fresh. And listen, the UFO encounter came after the Bigfoot.
What? How old were you?
About 12.
12?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And
cool
then,
childhood.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of experiences, you know.
Right.
And before the Bigfoot, I actually had a shadow person experience when I was a young kid. Actually saw.
I learned about shadow people last week, actually, and it's so captivating. But yeah, go ahead.
And then the UFO kind of looked like the shape of your eye, you know, and it was the same colors as the Bigfoot eye. It was red, orange, it was amber, and I can hear when I looked over, and I can hear like crackling, like static crackle. It almost reminded me when I saw the Northern Lights.
Oh yeah.
And when I was in Canada wrestling, I actually saw the Northern Lights and was fascinated by the colors, and you can literally see it waving. You hear the crackling, static crackling sound.
I saw it in West Virginia last year, wasn't it?
Well, you saw the part of the lights. You didn't see the Aurora Borealis. You have to see the Aurora Borealis itself, the actual Northern Lights. It's an amazing. I mean, you think this would be myth, but when you see it, it's an awesome sight. It's really breathtaking, and you can hear the crackling and you know, and it's pretty cool, you know. I would tell people this, that as many times I've seen the Aurora Borealis up in Canada, I was always on the side of the road taking a leak because there's gas stations so far in the distance.
Sure.
And so you get time to look, and you're seeing that, and it illuminates, like, you know, you see actually a lot with the Aurora Borealis, the actual Northern Lights. We just got like the just different color shades of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get the full effect of it, but that was part of it, and that's because of a magnetic shift. Okay, and it's supposed to be from the magnetic North Pole. So they say. You and I can't go there. We can't go to the Arctic Circle. We'll be stopped by, because and we can't go to Antarctica either, because the Antarctic Treaty, and the Antarctic Treaty also covers the Arctic Circle up north. So, and it's the one treaty that no government breaks. No government breaks that treaty. No matter if you're in war with each other. So think about this. I always thought about this. If I was Vladimir Putin and I really wanted to get Americans' attention or get the NATO's attention or whoever's attention, why wouldn't he just go break the Antarctic Treaty and say, well, I'm going to send a bunch of warships down to Antarctica?
Too cold.
Well, no. I think there's something there they're protecting, and they don't want us to go down there. And if we go down there, we'd be met by military personnel, and the military personnel will tell us that we have so much amount of time to turn around, or they're going to fire upon us. They're going to kill you. For
right.
What?
Huh.
And same thing in Arctic Circle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So those are kind of left, protected, guarded and everything. So there's something that they don't want us to see, or want us to know, or whatever. And of course, you go down that rabbit hole, then you're dealing with that whole flat earth. But I think the Wizard of Oz movie kind of explained it. And it exactly explains it, man. The Wizard of Oz, the great wizard who defeated the Wicked Witch, and all he was just a charlatan. There was a man behind a little screen to control thing, and you're going to the Emerald City.
We talking the Matrix?
Well, you're talking about everything. The Matrix
simulation
is
theory.
The Matrix comes from comes from Wizard of Oz. It does come from that. That's why they use the White Rabbit.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And it's the man behind the curtain, and that it talks about that, and history talks about that over and over. This is something we've known about, but there were two other civilizations that existed before ours, and they were destroyed, and those remnants are around. We still
pyramids.
Well, the pyramids was one of them. Everybody wants to think the Egyptians built them, but the Egyptians found the pyramids. If you go back and you go look in history, I did this when I was a kid, going to the library, and they had those little mysteries and stuff books. I don't know if you remember those books. It might have been before your time, but I remember I was going to the library reading the books, and they had them there, and I found them fascinating. And one of the things in there that caught me that didn't say this in school and doesn't say this on history, we're always told that the Egyptians built the pyramids, but if this book said that the Egyptians found the pyramids, they dug it out of the sand. They dug it out, and then they were able to get the Nile and the river to reconstruction, also, and brought plants and life, and brought life back to Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And then after all the many battles and King Tut and I think the Imhotep is the one that they're trying to find, because Imhotep was the one that had all these secrets and had all this knowledge, and that's the one people think that was probably the alien connection. But what you call alien, I don't see them as aliens. What people think is aliens, and what they think about space travel is totally different.
Yeah.
I have to send you a video I did about the about Earthrise on the moon, and in that video, it's only 2 minutes, and they can find it on my YouTube channel, which is Earthrise. This is Earthrise.
Earthrise YouTube channel?
On my YouTube channel, which is Cuban Mano, actual Cuban Mano.
Oh, got it. 2.
Yeah, right there.
Cuban
it's on my,
Mano
it just go, you can go and look. It's the newest video, and there's called Earthrise. And if you watch that video there, and I kind of explain stuff.
We have to watch it. Where is it?
Right there.
Earthrise. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's only 2 minutes. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I just want to talk about Earthrise from the moon for just a couple minutes. Like, this is a famous pic from NASA took from one of the Apollo missions. This photograph is what they call Earthrise. It's also some video footage of it, but this is such an awesome pic, but there's just something off about this picture for some reason. And it's just kind of odd, because here's a pic of the moon from the Earth. And doesn't this pic kind of resemble the Earthrise from the moon? Just something unusual about that pic. when we're taught in school that the size of the moon is smaller than the size of the Earth, we're taught that the Earth is the size of a basketball and the moon is the size of a softball, if you want to compare it. And this is the kind of example of what they teach us in school. Here's another pic that NASA released. Shows the size difference from the moon and the Earth from the opposite angle. So I'm trying to wonder and figure out how the Earth looks like the moon from the moon on the Earthrise, on the size comparison from the Earth being larger than the moon. Shouldn't it look more like this? That the Earth should look more like this from the moon instead of looking like the moon to the Earth? I mean, the Earth is much bigger, so the whole Earth should be taking up the whole circumference. The whole entire picture should take up the whole entire space. So it should look more like this from the moon. That's how the Earth should look, just from what they teach us in school and what NASA shows us in the photographs and the size comparisons. Any thoughts on this? I would like to know what people like to think about Earthrise.
That's fun. Well, I know what you're saying. Well, wouldn't it be the distance? Like, technically, wouldn't it only have to be so much bigger?
No.
Than the moon?
No, you can do this experiment to yourself, just like I said with the basketball and the softball. It's supposed to be 239,000 miles, maybe a little bit more since they got the math off, apparently, because, Stanley Kubrick put that in his Shining movie. But I
remember you talked to Shining with me about 20 minutes when you shot that movie, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But
well, if you take a basketball and a softball, okay, and people want to say size difference, you can do this experiment. Everybody can do this. They want to get if they want to get a regular globe and get a softball size styrofoam, they can do this experiment too. You can, you do 239,000 miles by using, the your little atlas meter if you want, or a little bit shorter in centimeters, and you can change the distance as far as you want with it. Okay, the size don't change from the moon size don't change no matter how far away it goes or how far away the Earth goes. The size don't change. The size stays the same. Okay, and you move them away and you look from that styrofoam. Like, I can put the Earth right here and put the moon here, and I can go behind the moon and I can look at the moon and I can see that the basketball or softball, I can see the basketball. If I raise the basketball up, okay, it takes up the whole entire view, even on that, because it's a large object. This is a small object. Okay. If I go on the other side of the basketball and I raise the styrofoam moon up, it being this distance apart, the moon's going to look like just like it would do from the Earth. So you know that the moon is smaller than the Earth, obviously, because you see that just from this experiment. If you do the opposite angle, you're going to see the basketball is bigger. The only way what you're talking about would happen is, I don't know if you ever seen this type of visual effects that they would do in Hollywood, and you can build this yourself, and it's like you can build a little stage where you have a little uprise here, but you kind of angle the wall to a narrow point. And then when you walk, if you're in this corner, and someone's in this corner, they're going to look like a giant. You'll look like a little short, small person. Then you trade places, and then that person becomes a giant. The only way that will work that you're talking about is in that scenario. So that would say that the moon and the Earth would have to be in an opposite angle of a control, like vacuum. Void, in order for that illusional effect to take up here. Any illusionist, table illusionist, even does illusion tricks, can tell you about that, because that's what they specialize in. But they're mainly based upon hand trickery and keeping your eyes watching this and that too, for the illusion to have the effect. It's to keep your eyes focused. And but if you was to be on the moon and you was going to see the Earth is going to be so large, and it's not just the sun light that you got to worry about, it's Earth light you got to worry about too, coming on the moon, because the sun's reflecting off the Earth. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and the Earth will just take up that whole space. It just will take it up. I'm not saying that, the thing I'd want to tell people, I'm not saying that we never went to the moon. Now, as far as putting man on the moon, I don't personally believe we stood on the moon at all, and I'll tell you that because, again, I'm going by what they taught us, and I'm going to tell you this. This is one thing you have to keep in mind.
Sure.
I don't need to go to all the footage and all that, because I can't get past this Earthrise. And I'll tell you why. Either they're lying to us in school, okay, or NASA's lying to us on what they're telling us. And where does the school get their information from, and who told them? The teacher that taught me was taught and told that for him to tell me that, right? Who told him? Where he get that information from? He got it from NASA. Okay. So there's a lie there. And either way you go with this, okay.
Right.
Either that what I'm seeing is fake. What they're showing me is a lie. They're either lying to me in school or they're lying to me. Either way, there's a lie. So no matter which way you go to, and if there's one lie told, it's all a lie. People have to understand this. It's like if you go to court, you don't have to prove, like a prosecuting attorney don't have to prove that you're 100% guilty. He only has to prove 1% guilt. If you lie once, you're just guilty. If you're a lie, same here. It's the same applies here. If there's a lie being told, either way it goes, there's a lie being told. Did my teacher lie to me, or is it an answer line? But they were lied to if they're telling me that, and that lie came from the same source. So there's a lie going on there. And if you're lying, there's only one reason why we actually intentionally lie. There's unintentional lying and there's intentionally lying.
I guess that's my thing. Like, what would be the purpose?
Because they're covering up and they're hiding something, right? And if you study and research, because NASA came in existence from what we were just talking about from the Antarctic Treaty. Okay. And
this is a lot, Richie.
Yeah, and NASA should have been called Nazi because all the scientists were Nazis that we got from
now Operation Paperclip.
Yeah,
100% true.
Yeah, we Americans took the scientists. Russia didn't want them.
Right.
But Russia also knows this.
Werner von Braun.
Yeah, Werner von Braun, he was a smart man, and he worked with Walt Disney. See, you do your research on where he worked with Walt Disney. Walt Disney had made a large scale moon set. And there's pictures of this with the camera trailers on it. And if you look at that moon set, it looks just like the footage that they're showing. Walt Disney, and people was like, oh, you can't do that. Listen, the holograms that Walt Disney was the first person to do a whole thing of holograms that looked like actual people dancing up, like moving around and floating in this, everything. That was back in freaking early 1960s. And okay, think about that. Like late 50s, 60s, he's doing holograms. Walt Disney.
Right.
Walt Disney is he is another bizarre individual himself when it comes to doing the research. But when he and Walt and von Braun got together, then they had this whole idea of the space. I think what von Braun was trying to do, he needed a pitch man. He needed the best to give him something so he can deliver to the government. There was a space race going on between Russia and the United States. It was actually a nuclear race. People don't understand that. That space race was a nuclear race, and it goes back to the art of war. He who has the high ground wins the war. So if you can control up in space in the air, and you don't need an actual warhead. You can take a rod. They showed this in the G.I. Joe movie, and that's actually true. You can if you get far enough up in the air, and you can just take a regular iron metal rod and drop it. Mm-hmm. Just like a meteorite. If it crashes and hits, you have the same nuclear explosion without the creating it's much cheaper, more efficient for them to do it. And that's what it was. But they ran into something else, which you should study on, which is Operation Fishbowl.
I haven't heard of that one.
Okay.
No.
But that's where they're trying to find out. And this is where they find out where they blasting nuclear missiles all over in the atmosphere of Earth. Mm. So, and people want to know where cancer comes from. It comes from two different things. And this is the whole rabbit hole.
The devil.
Well, listen, no, cancer is man-made. I'm telling you, cancer is man-made. Okay. Now there's cancer that's been around, but cancer comes from radiation. Okay. And we're so there's so much radiation from us, from the lights, from blue lights on our cell phones, the signals, the blue light on the screen itself, these screens here, it's got blue light. That's radiation. It's all radiation.
Well, radiation also kills certain types of cancer.
It does. It kills itself. That's right.
Right.
And then, but there's different types of radiation. There's X-rays, and people don't realize X-rays is X radiation. People don't understand radio waves. That's radiation. You're from your radio. That's why it's called radio wave. Wi-Fi. That's radiation. Everything radiates, even our human bodies. We all, but our tissues can't handle but so much. That's why you get sick and you develop cancer, tumors. That's what happens. We know that, from our studies from the past, from World War II.
It's like 90% of men will get prostate cancer eventually. I can't
just
remember.
like
It's
women,
something insane.
just like women getting breast cancer.
Right. Well, if you live long enough.
Yeah. Well, listen, here's a secret. In an alkaline diet, an alkaline life, viruses and cancer, even cancer itself cannot, if you stay all alkaline, you'll be healthy. Okay. But alkaline itself can also be deadly to people if you consume too much of it, like alkaline water and all that, because what's batteries made out of? It's the first alkaline battery, right? Then you got lithium now, which we use lithium now, which lithium and all battery is it's basically a capacitor.
Yeah.
And it stores and discharges electrical pulses. That's what it does. And see, I took 2 years of industrial electronics, and I'll tell you the reason why I took electronics is I wanted to learn how to make bombs when I was a kid.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I learned how to make bombs, and anything could be a bomb, but you don't need electronics to make bombs. It can be chemicals. There's chemicals, electrical, there's a bunch of different things. And, but when I was in electronics, I also became the only one in my class to get a ham radio's license. I was the only one that knew Morse code. I also can speak binary. I understood binary code reading, which is the zeros and ones is what computer reads. Okay. I was the only one. I also took digital techniques. I took laser technology. I was the only one that did a hologram in my class in that aspect. So I understand all these aspects. At that time period, we also was testing the first phase of the internet stuff. They brought it to our Votech for us to test, and the IBM computers, and the computer class hooked it up. But we had to experiment, and I would talk to had a crush on her. I had to talk to the home ec teacher at the thing. Yeah,
like, hey, did you know I saw Bigfoot?
Yeah,
let me tell you about it.
Yeah, she was nice. I'll be honest. She knew I had a crush on her, but she was very nice, handled it very well.
Right.
And I wish a lot of people could be like her to handle that situation.
Professional.
Well, professional. Plus, she was adult, and she understood not how to watch how she says and does things. And she didn't want to hurt feelings, I became friends with her later on in life. And
also didn't want to be a criminal and go to prison.
Well, back then it wouldn't have happened.
Oh yeah. Well,
back then, when a man molested a young girl, the man would be convicted. But back then, the woman that molested a boy didn't get convicted because they blamed it on the boy. You see, that's the stereotype that changed through the society as we go today.
Right.
Now we understand how manipulation actually works.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But see, back then they thought, like me being a teenager, mind you, I was 16, 17 at that time. And what you're going through is your hormones, and what the boys do, they're attracted to that older teacher, that older woman, and the boy tries to manipulate her every way he can. Men start learning how to manipulate women at an early age, very early. Okay. And this is
if they're scumbags.
Well, men, no,
you know what I mean?
No, you can't listen. If you say that you wasn't attracted to an older woman when you was a teenager, you're lying.
Well, no, I'm just saying, manipulation sounds.
Well, you do. You're trying to manipulate, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to trick them. That's right. What manipulation is, tricking someone.
It's a little Machiavellian.
Well, let's do it this way. Manipulation is speaking politically correct. Tricking them is layman's terms. It's the same thing. The difference is to understand you're using more words. And the reason why you use more educated words is to confuse people. Again, speaking politically correct, when you speak politically correct, you're just basically lying. But it covers you because you're
I prefer collaboration. Maybe. Well, that would be the word.
That's another speaking correctly. Politically correctness. Speaking that way. That's that word there. Collaboration is another word. See, these words, they use that because it protects them, but it also covers up for their lie. I'll explain this. It's everything's a game of manipulation in the world. Everything. I don't care who you're at, where you go, who you talk to. I've been part of the pro wrestling business for 35 years. Been around. I was born because of it. My dad came to WOI Saturday Night Wrestling. After he went there in 1969, he went straight down the road to Skyline Drive-In when my mom was working her first job.
That's where what's his name died.
Hank Williams.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't die there. He had his last meal there. He died on down the road. And
I thought he pulled in the parking lot dead.
No. That was the gas station across from the Oak Hill Library. You see, I researched that too, and I can take you the whole trail, and I can tell you the guy who drove the vehicle was the one that killed him. They got into Hank Williams was a really bad alcoholic.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And he was drinking all the time. That's why the Grand Prix offer wouldn't allow him back. Okay. And when he got drunk, he's all like everybody else, 10 feet tall, bulletproof. And he had an argument with that driver, and that driver beat him to death. When he pulled over in the gas station across, there was a filling gas station.
He beat him to death?
On the way.
Is that how he died?
Yeah. He died. And see, the coroner in Oak Hill, there was no real coroner in Oak Hill. It was just a doctor. And no one had this experience back at that time period. Oak Hill was a small little, hillbilly town, if you want to call it that. And the chief of police never had to do an investigation on a homicide. So he just kind of ruled it as
I think he died of a heart attack.
That's what he ruled it. But that's what the coroner says. But then you had other coroners that come out and say that's not what he died from.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Richie, I love you, dude.
Yeah.
This is crazy. And
then but my mom worked there at Skyline Drive-In, right?
Right.
And see, I study all that. For me to write my stories and my films, I had to research.
How many have you made? How many films?
Okay, for me personally, I made 3, which is The Mountaineer, Boxer versus Wrestler, Legends Mountain, which I used your office in town.
Yeah.
And I'm working now on The Cuban Assassin, which is a docufilm about my dad and myself.
How long is it going to be?
I'm still doing it's going to be like an ID channel kind of like thing. I'm going to be being interviewed, and I'll be using some highlights of both mine and my dad's matches. I'll be doing reenactments. I'm playing my dad in the reenactments, just so you know, because I look so much like him.
That's cool. Yeah.
And my son's also plays my Uncle Frank, and he's also going to be playing my dad in one reenactment. And he actually was in the Super B mask as me at one point in some of the scenes. And my nephew also is the Super B. My son's the one sitting down, and my nephew's the one that's doing the dialogue with the voice. And so
oh, cool.
Yeah, because my son don't like talking on film.
When are you trying to have it done?
I'm gonna hopefully by the fall.
Cool.
Next Sunday I'm gonna finish off the reenactments, and then I'm going to do the interview, and then I gotta get the pictures, because we'll have pictures, highlights, from the wrestling matches, my dad and myself, and the reason why I'm doing the movie is because everybody wants me to write a book. I can't write a book because I have to tell the truth. If I write a book, I got to tell the truth. And there's a lot of things, because when I started from the territory days, there's a lot of things that happens on the road that shouldn't be talked about. I still believe that what happens on the road should stay on the road. And wrestlers today, I'm grateful that they don't have to endure some of the stuff that a lot of wrestlers had to endure in the past.
Schedule's a lot easier, right? Now?
No.
Or is it
I think their schedules is back in the territory days, you work in the territory, you're only traveling the territory. Okay. And you come back whatever day they have TV, because that's your commercial that you advertise your house shows and your stuff. Today it's all TV, and the house shows is just like a live tour. Like you watch the music.
Okay.
You watch the best way to compare it today. You watch OEM TV, you see the music video, then also the rock bands coming on tour. That's what WWE and wrestling is. They go on tour. Okay. And you get to see them perform live and stuff. And so it's different today than what it was back before. The TV was your commercial advertisements, and you made your money off the house shows. Today, you make your money off the TV sponsorships from other different, because there's so many people involved that advertisement and merchandising is the biggest thing to make their money from. Yeah. And so it's a different thing. And I'm grateful today for the wrestlers today. I really am, because they don't have to do what a lot of wrestlers did back in the past, and don't have to witness things that could be criminally, charged on things. And And I mean,
don't commit crimes, people.
No,
be good to each other.
No. When I say criminally, I mean, there's
and a disclaimer too. We are not offering health advice on the alkaline diet, but look into things.
No, listen, do your own research.
Yeah, 100%.
Talk and listen, and I'll be the first one to tell you, talk to your physician. No one should never do a diet. No one should do an alkaline diet, anything without consulting a physician. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not professionals.
No,
but we do research.
I've researched for storytelling. I look at myself as an artist. I'm a storyteller.
Sure.
And that's what pro wrestling is. And the matches is storytelling.
Yeah.
But let me get, I kind of veered off and I apologize.
Oh, no. Yeah, no problem.
Let me get to that UFO.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Rewind back. All right.
Yeah.
UFO.
You just did a John Cena prototype.
Oh, nice.
In OVW, he used to do this thing. He would do this pause while he's doing his promo. And I wish they would let him do the prototype in WW in the big show.
Yeah.
And he would do this and he'd talk and he goes, "Oh, you didn't catch all that?" And he'd go, and he'd play it back,
Hey, John Cena learned from the best,
Well, hey, John, listen, people don't give John Cena credit with due. Some people don't. And John Cena grew up a wrestling fan, just much everybody else did. He grew up during the late 80s. Sting was his favorite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Sting
Which Sting? Crow Sting or?
No.
The original.
The Surfer Sting.
Okay.
Fruity Pebble Sting.
Yeah.
And then he grew up with him, and then he idolized Ric Flair. He understood Hulk Hogan's type of messaging, because if you look at John Cena, it's another version of Hulk Hogan. Stone Cold Steve Austin is the mirror version of Hulk Hogan. I mean,
yeah. Didn't he have the things under his arms too?
That's Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's right.
See, Hulk Hogan was the train, the prayers, the vitamins.
Yep.
Okay.
Say your prayers.
Yeah, say your prayers. And he was the live action comic book, because Vince McMahon catered to a young audience.
He even had the comic book font.
Yes.
For Hulk Hogan. Yeah. Hey, how about that?
And they had to pay residuals to Marvel, Stan Lee, to use the right to use Hulk.
He's one of the only ones that got his name back, right? That owns his actual name.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't Vince own a majority of the people's names?
Well, not Vince no more. TKO.
Oh yeah, he's out.
Yeah, and
he's out.
But here's the thing: with Stone Cold Steve Austin, he's the mirror opposite of Hulk Hogan. Don't trust anyone.
Yeah.
You SOB and middle finger and all that.
The first redneck that I remember.
Well, he's the anti-hero.
Yeah.
Okay, he's the anti-hero, and again, you're going by demographics, and like I try to explain to people, you think about the ages from 6 to 10. Vince was catering to them. That's why he had the action figures, the video games, the toys, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
T-shirts, lunch boxes. Hulk Hogan had the vitamins and all that. He made his wrestlers like comic book characters, and Hulk Hogan is the big superhero.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you go another 10 years and all of a sudden those kids are now older, 10 years older. And most of them are going through adolescence and working at McDonald's, Burger King, flipping burgers. They hate their boss. They want to beat their boss. They want to kill their boss. They want to hurt their boss. They're coming to the reality of life. Right. Sure. And then all of a sudden Stone Cold Steve Austin, there is the anti-hero. He's beating up his boss, Vince McMahon. Okay. Yeah. And so they're living vicariously they was living through the superhero, but now they're an anti-hero. Now they went from Superman to Batman.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that
was
is.
One of the most famous storylines was him and Vince McMahon.
It is the top single feud.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the number one single feud.
Vince McMahon is arguably one of the greatest heels of all time. Really.
On accident.
Yeah.
Thanks to Bret the Hitman Hart and Montreal Screwjob.
Yep, Montreal Screwjob. Highly recommend y'all look into that.
Yeah, and then something about Montreal. Everybody gets screwed in Montreal because there's a couple of them happened there before. It's just Bret's the most famous one. But then you fast forward again. The kids are now out of McDonald's. They actually got a nice, good job. Maybe working here in West Virginia in the coal mine. Maybe working on the railroads or something that's got a good job.
Sure.
And it got some good income. And now they got families and kids, and they don't want their kids to see DX and Stone Cold Steve Austin no more. Now they go to a PG version, which you got Hustle, Loyalty, and Respect. John Cena. Hustle, Loyalty, Respect is prayers, training, vitamins. You see? And then you got John Cena. But what they did with John Cena is they made him look like the average person that you sit beside.
He was he started rapping, and then
he does that. That's him.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happened, and I'll tell you how that came about. They had a Halloween special. WWE had a Halloween special on Raw, and John Cena dressed up as Vanilla Ice and was so comical that Stephanie McMahon couldn't stop laughing.
Well, he was rapping on the bus with her.
He rapped on the bus, but they did that special. Okay,
after that,
he dressed up as Vanilla Ice, and he was rapping on that set. He had her laughing on the bus. She couldn't stop laughing after that. I mean, if you watch that video, she's dying. I mean, she's red faced, tears, and she went to her dad and said, you got to do something with this.
Yeah.
And so they made it. So they started him off as a heel, the word life, he's the doctor of thugonomics. That's his rap. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the fans are catering to him because it's still part of the Attitude Era, but they're starting to change. And all of a sudden he changes and becomes, hustle, loyalty, respect, becomes the role model.
Yeah.
And then they try to shove Roman Reigns down people's throat. And that's not Roman Reigns' fault. Okay. By any means, it's not Roman Reigns, at that time. And people didn't want the meat anymore because all the guys were jacked up, beefed up meat. They wanted their vegetables and their potatoes now. And so they start catering to the underdog, which was Daniel Bryan. So Vince didn't like it, but he went that way. But then Daniel Bryan got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now I was out of wrestling here. I don't know that name.
And then when Daniel Bryan was out, then he tried to shove Roman Reigns. That was his backup again.
Oh yeah, I know him.
And then fans were booing him, hating him, and then
he got cancer, right?
Well, his cancer came back. He has I think it's leukemia. I think he has, and so he has to stay checked. That's why he's not wrestling as much. He's taking care of his health, and he's got a family.
Yeah,
and he made well enough money. But here's the thing. He wasn't over with the fans. Fans wasn't accepting him. So since they tried shoving Roman Reigns down a second time onto the fans, guess where they went to this time? They went to the man, Becky Lynch. They went to a woman, and that's what happened there. Mm-hmm. And that's how she got her popularity. And then she was a female version of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, cool.
Plus she was the only woman calling herself the man. Not like she's saying she's the man. She's saying she's the man, like Ric Flair. She's the best of what she does.
Sure.
And
I like that.
And then after Becky, then that's when they turned Roman Reigns heel. And guess what? That's what the fans wanted. They wanted him to be a heel. And then Roman Reigns got to be himself. And people don't understand that Roman Reigns tried to ask Vince to be a heel, and Vince wouldn't do it. Then now he got to be a heel, and then he got to be champion for 3 years and became a big star because of that. And now he's a babyface again. And when they took him away from just short, now they want Roman, right? So now they want him. So it shows that it just took that little small thing to make him get him over.
Yeah. All right, before we get too carried away,
back to the UFO.
UFO looks like your eye.
Yeah, red, amber, orange. And while I'm looking at it, I can hear the crackling sound, like static. And I'm sitting there, and I was like, "Hey," telling my friends they're on their bikes, and as I say, "Hey," it did this. It was like the old TV screen, like you turn the TV off and it go to a dot and disappear. It's like. And I can actually hear that sound like I just made, like, whoosh. I can hear that sound. And I was like, hey, and I felt like it was observing us. And my friends, they was like, what? And I said, you see that? And they didn't see it. I was the only one that saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see a lot more UFOs. But then I also started remembering back to the Bigfoot, what he's telling me, because a few years later, just a couple years later, I would get mysteriously sick in school. And my mom, and this was really hard on me, but I could not, when I got home, my skin was changing colors. It was an orange color.
Mm-hmm.
My lips were highly blistered. My mom could not afford, she didn't have health insurance on us. She couldn't afford taking me to the hospital. And I couldn't talk. She would take a dropper, feed me soup and water with a dropper. I couldn't move. I was on the couch like this.
Goodness.
Listening, I hear everybody, hear my mom, and my mom would wipe me down with alcohol. Someone told her, you put alcohol on his skin to open the pores and let the skin breathe, which is true. And she's wiping me down with alcohol. And my mom had to go to work, and she'd be crying. My mom would be crying. I mean, she'd be crying. It killed me. And this is the miracle part. And it happened in that order. Shadow person, Bigfoot, UFO, miracle, and then the paranormal came later. Okay. Mm-hmm. Remote viewing's always been there since I was a kid, and the past life regression and memories was there when I was a kid. But the miracle, I'm just thinking I can't handle my mom like this no more. And I just said in my mind, because I can't talk, I couldn't move, couldn't talk. I was there for like weeks, and I said, Lord, in my mind, I said, don't torture my mom like this. Go ahead and just take me. You know, I don't want to see her. My mom's suffering. Even though I'm suffering, but I'm not suffering like she is, you know, and a mother's heartache is the worst suffer anybody can ever go through. And I said that, and as I said that, my mom, for some reason, put the phone by the couch. I couldn't move. And then I couldn't speak. And all of a sudden the phone rang as I thought that in my mind at that moment. I was like, Lord, please just don't let my mom suffer like this no more. Please take me now. You know, I don't want my mom to suffer like this anymore, you know. And then the phone rang as I thought that. And it kept ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing, and it would not stop. I'm wondering to myself, why I can't, you know. I was like, why don't these people get an idea that no one's answering the phone? And it kept ringing and nonstop. It just kept ringing. Then all of a sudden, somehow, I forced myself to reach over and pick up the phone. Okay. And I pick it up and I put it to my ear, and trying to talk, and I'm like, oh, like that, you know. And then it's like, there's a woman's voice. And she says, this Richie Acevado? I said, yeah. And she said she says, Juan Gill, which Juan is my friend from next door neighbor. And she said, he's in the office sick, and we can't get a hold of his parents. Can you go over there and tell them to give us a phone call? And I said, oh, I'll try. And I hung up the phone, and I forced myself to sit up. I go over there, and I got a blanket over me because I, you know, had shivers too. It was not flu, it was something else, you know, because it caused my skin to turn orange, yellowish orange. And I was in school, and I remember I started seeing my skin tone change, and I started feeling this fever, and I was starting to get lightheaded. And I told the teacher, I said, hey, I got to go. Someone's got to, you know, get a hold of my mom. And I stood up and I collapsed. They had the janitor take me home. It's weird. You would think they would call 911. They had the janitor take me home. And so I'm like, I forced myself to get up. I go outside the door, go to the next trailer next door, because we lived in a trailer then. And I go knock on the door. I'm knocking. There's nobody answering. I'm knocking. I walk back over to the house. I sit down and pick up the phone. I call the school back. The woman answered the phone, sounded just like the woman that called me. And I said, this is Richie Acevado. I'm calling you back. You called me to go over Juan Gill's house and let his family know that he's in the office. And I'm calling you back to, you know, there's nobody home. And she said, who? And I said, Juan Gill. And she goes, who'd you say called you? I said, well, you called me. And she goes, we never called you. She says, I can hear her talking to the woman in the background. She's like, did Juan Gill come in here in the office, needing to go home or call his mom? And they said, no, Juan Gill never came in here. She goes, Richie, one never came in the office. I never called. So you just called me. I just talked to you not even 5 minutes ago. She goes, no, I never called. One's never been in the office. And I said, okay. And I hung up the phone. Then I started looking at my hands, and now my skin color is back to normal. Now my lips are still highly blistered, really bad, and they were hurting. But I'm able to talk. I'm able to move. The fever's gone all of a sudden, and I felt good.
Wow.
And I went out and sat on my steps in front of the trailer, waiting for one and the other kids to come home. And there's one walking up, and he's surprised to see me. And he run up to me. He's like, oh, you're better. I said, yeah, man. I said, hey, Juan, let me ask you a question. I said, did you go to the office at the school today? You said you were sick and had them call me to get a hold of your mom. He said, no, I never went to the office. And I'm sitting there thinking, the only thing I can attribute that to is a miracle. And my mom come home, boy, she had tears in her eyes. I was well. I mean, she told me she was afraid that she was going to come home and find me dead. And I was asking God to take me, at that point. I didn't want to hear my mom's, I couldn't handle my mom suffering no more. And then I started remembering back to the Bigfoot, what he told me in my dreams. I was going to have hurdles and obstacles, but don't worry, I'll be okay. Everything's going to be fine. I'll be fine. Just keep basically moving forward. And I had to deal with a lot of obstacles in my life. But every time I go through that, I always think about that Bigfoot all the time. Whether I was going through my divorce, when I caught my wife with somebody else, whether one of my best friends died in the locker room from a massive heart attack.
Oh,
I by far outlived him now. My other best friend got murdered, and I had to deal with that. Another one of my best friend died from a rare genetic kidney disorder. So he died from kidney failure. A lot of my best friends and wrestling colleagues had died over the years, and I'm still going and still living. And I understand that I have to, you have to keep going. And the only way people live on is through their memories, and you tell their story. And while I'm doing this movie, the Cuban Assassins, just so you know, I did a reenactment scene of the Bigfoot that will be in the movie.
Oh, nice.
So, and so it will be in the movie. And awesome. the guy in the Bigfoot outfit is a Bigfoot researcher from this area.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And he asked him if I
have to get his name.
I'll give it to you. And he lives in Beckley.
Oh, cool.
And my other friend, which had a Bigfoot encounter himself. And I think he was also abducted by aliens, something that'd be more up your alley too.
Naturally.
His name is J.D. Roddenberry, and he lives directly up the road from where you're at. Not far, not a couple minutes.
Abducted by aliens, you'll fit the show perfectly. So that's great.
He can tell you all that. And I talked to him about you, and I told him I would give you his number.
Perfect.
And I would give you, and I even talked to my friend who does Danny is his name. He does a big research, and I told him I'll give you his number too. And
yeah. Reach out. Creepalachia's Facebook page too.
Yeah.
You can DM the page. We can get it going.
Yeah. I'll give you their numbers.
Yeah, that's great.
And they don't give me permission. Listen, I want to make sure I get something clear to people. I don't give out other people's phone number without permission. I just don't do that.
That's good to clarify.
Yeah. So keep in mind, if you go to ask me for phone numbers, you're not going to get it without me getting that person's permission to give it. So please, you can contact all those people on their social media sites and emails. And if you want the phone number, I have to get permission. I just don't give out phone numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, people have personal lives and we all got to live it, And, but, let's get to the paranormal one.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay? Now I had 3 paranormal, things. The first one happened when I was living with my cousin Daryl in Scarborough, West Virginia, and our aunt and uncle had passed away, and he stayed in the house, And I had a roommate and living in Beckley, and he never had any money, and I was paying the bills, and I just got tired of it. And,
good for you.
And then I just left and moved out and left it to him and went to my cousin Daryl. And my cousin Daryl is, he's gay. All right. And he'll be gone a lot of times, and but while he'll be gone, I'll be sitting in the house, right? And with his boyfriend and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
He's married now. He's got a husband named Scott, and Scott,
cool. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, he's been long married. Scott's been one of his closest friends and stuff and everything. And
that's great.
And but Daryl, at the house there at our aunt and uncle's house there, I was there by myself, watching TV. And in the kitchen, it's an old house.
Mm-hmm.
It's just electrical wire with just a light bulb in it. Okay. And it's a switch you push, the old push switch, not the turn knob. But
I know what you're talking about.
Okay. And you push it on one side, turn it on, push it back, turn it off. Okay. And I'll be sitting there watching TV, and then all of a sudden the kitchen light comes on. No clicking sound, just the bulb comes on. I'm like, what the heck? I get up, I'm looking at the bulb hanging down from me, and I just turn it off. And I was like, and I never hear a switch, but I just push it, right? You push it one way, it's supposed to turn on, the other way, it's supposed to go off. It's on the off position, but for me to turn it off, I have to push it the other way to turn it off. So I'll go and sit down, and the light comes back on again. I get up, and I'm looking, and the switch is on this back on that side was supposed to, and that side put back and it goes off. I go to sit down. Before I sit down, the light comes on. I go in there and I turn it off again. As soon as I go to walk away, it turns on. I'm furious. And I say real loud, look, I'm tired. I don't have time to play games. Stop it. I'm tired, and I turned it off again, and I went to go sit down, and I'm looking, make sure it ain't turning on.
Now you talking to the ghosts?
I'm just saying it out loud.
Okay.
I don't even know if it's a ghost or
whoever
what.
it is.
I'm just saying, stop it. I'm getting mad.
Could you power bomb at this time? Was you like ready to snap?
Well, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they don't want to mess with Richie.
I feel it was either my uncle or my aunt's presence.
Oh wow!
And one thing that was kind of secretive for my family at that time that they didn't talk about, which was an open secret, was my cousin's homosexuality. And I don't think that they liked him bringing guys over there.
Oh,
but it can also be where while Daryl was gone, I snuck in a couple girls over there too.
Oh yeah.
So
gotcha.
it could be
a toss up.
It could be a little both.
Right.
And my aunt and uncle were church going people, and it was nothing harmful or anything, but it definitely get my attention. And so, but later on, I would end up leaving, from there. And then, the next haunting was when I was on tour in Stampede Wrestling for the Hart family. And Ross Hart, I stayed at Ross Hart's townhouse. He had a townhouse, and I stayed at his townhouse. And Ross was out with a friend, and I was out in the club. We was out it's weird. The tag team champions, which is Hot Shot Johnny Devine, good talented. He got to wrestle in TNA, Hot Shot Johnny Devine. And his tag team partner up there was Greg Pistol Pollock, and he was the current modern day time of the Dynamite Kid or Chris Benoit. And wrestled Greg Pistol Pollock a lot. The only time I got to wrestle Hot Shot Johnny Devine was one time on a house show, one of the very few house shows he ever did because he had to work. He worked in a strip club. He was a bartender in a strip club when he worked up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he doesn't want me to tell that, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Hey, got to pay the bills.
Yeah, that's right. And it's no shame in it. I was a bouncer in a strip club while I was wrestling too. Right down the road at Heartbreakers on Harper Road.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Huh.
And I also bounced at Billy and Joe's Royal House down in Daniels, and I wrestled at Fox's county line down there at the county line between Mount Hope and Bradley.
Oh, cool.
So And but the second one is at Ross's house, and we's out after, we did one of the shows, stopped by, and Johnny's working, so we wanted to see Johnny and buy some drinks and give him a little bit of tip money, and Johnny, he's kind of weird. I said, Johnny, you should be doing Chippendale dancing, because you look like you would be one,
Right.
And he says, no, I like wrestling, and but I only got to wrestling once in a 6-man tag, and me and my dad, and I trying to think who the other person was with this. I think it was he's one of the guys that got to go and becoming WWE as one Ascension. I also wrestled a guy that was called Rob Royce. They was calling Rob Roy Scott, who became one of the Highlanders in WWE too. I also worked with Rene Dupree, who became one of the La Resistance in WWE. I've worked with Eddie Colon, which you know him as Primo Colon, Carlito's brother, and all that, because I worked for the Colones the following year after the Hearts. I worked for the Duprees, all of them, but we was there at the bar after a show in Calgary at the strip club. I'm like, man, and Brett Holiday was there, and his trainer was Jonathan Holiday, and his real name's Brett Hansen. And I always made jokes. He one of the Hansen kids, the singers that.
Oh, nice.
Then,
Mbop.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I would pick on him about it because, there's no relation, but, I pick on him about it. Nice kid, that Brett. And I wrestled Brett so many times, and Brett was a very good wrestler. I don't know where he's at today. It'd be nice to know how he's doing. Because he was a very good wrestler.
Right.
And I really enjoyed wrestling all the people up there. Wrestling for the Hearts, I got a flavor for them. I got a flavor wrestling someone from a different country around the world. I got to learn their styles and everything. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And then great experience. Got learning different styles from different cultures from a different world. And but I'm staying at Ross's house. Okay, now Owen had died a couple years prior. Owen Hart
fell from the rafters.
And well, I'm at the townhouse, one time with my dad. Okay, Dad's staying the night there. He's sleeping, laying on the floor. I'm laying on the couch. Ross has bar lights like these up here, but they're white. And he has a controller on the wall that's like a little round knob and stuff. You just hit it, and you can hit it a couple times, and low, dim, bright, and I'm laying on the couch, and the light bar comes on. I get up. It's like, Dad, you turn the lights on? No. Dad's covered up. He's got the whole blanket over his head. And I get up and I turn it off. I go lay back down on the couch. Light comes on. And that one bar light's like shines right in my face on the couch there. And I'm like, Dad, you turn the lights on? No. I get up and turn it off. I lay back down. The lights come back on. I was like, again, I get mad, and I'm like, stop it. I am tired. I don't have time to play games. Stop it. And I get up and I turn the light off and I lay down and don't come back on. And then we're at a wrestling show. Dad's telling the guys the story, and Dad's saying he's scared to death. He goes, but Richie, he's getting up, turn the lights off, and he gets mad and he yells and tells them, he says he's tired, stop playing games. He yells, and he goes, and I'm scared, and my son's yelling at something that's not there. And it stops.
Yeah.
And then I was there again by myself this time at the house, and townhouses got kind of different levels on it, and in his house, and I was on the second level, third level. Second level, he had his washer and dryer, because you kind of go down a long hallway upstairs, washer and dryer, up another steps, and you got the living room, kitchen, and another room to the side. And then you go up another couple steps, then you got 2 rooms and a bathroom upstairs. I'm down on the level where the couch is and stuff. Brett had one of the bedrooms, and Ross had the other bedroom. We shared the bathroom. This is Ross's townhouse. This is how kind the Hart families are.
Right.
They're one of the best. The Dupree family, the Hart family, one of the best families I ever met.
They seem legit, like just from interviews.
Well, they are a loving family.
Yeah.
And I heard so much at that time of people saying that they were divided over Owen's death. I saw a loving family. They all helped. They all helped.
Mm-hmm.
The all of them. Natty was there. She wasn't wrestling, but she was there. She was 15. TJ Wilson was there, and you know him better as the Tyson Kid. Harry was there, which is the British Bulldog, David Boy Smith's son, which is now David Boy Smith Jr. Mm-hmm. And they were all there. And the other kids, all of them, even Natty's sister, they all helped. The aunts, all of them. It was crazy. The whole family helped, and they were a loving family, and they would literally give the shirt off their backs to help people.
That's great.
And I was like, man, this is one of the best families I ever seen in my life. I got no bad words to say of anything of the Hart family.
Yeah.
And Ross, like let us stay there, right? Me and Brett, but he didn't have to. Didn't charge us rent or nothing. So we just had to buy our own groceries. And then I was laying on the couch one night, and all of a sudden I hear the door downstairs open. I'm thinking it's Ross. Okay. And I hear walking up the steps, literally hear walking up the steps. And then all of a sudden I hear giggling at the foot of the couch where my feet are. And I'm just sleeping, trying to half asleep, half awake. And I hear giggling, like giggles. And then all of a sudden I feel a tug on the blanket. And I hear Cuban. And I'm like, stop, leave me alone, Ross. And then he's like, another tug. And all of a sudden, Cuban. And I was like, Ross, I want to sleep, please. And I don't want to get mad at Ross, And all of a sudden I hear giggling, laughing. Then all of a sudden he says, I'll be upstairs. And I'm okay. And then I hear the walk steps go up and the door open and shut. Then I'm sitting there thinking for a second, why would Ross want to wake me up? And why would he want to tell me that he and whoever he's with is going to be upstairs? He never would do that. Ross was always quiet when he come home, always quiet to make sure he didn't wake me or Brett, And I was like, I sat up and I started thinking, I said, what? And I remember when I had opened my eyes when he was saying he'd be upstairs, and I got a glance and all I saw was blonde hair. And I started thinking, wait a minute, Ross don't have blonde hair. So I go upstairs and I'm knocking on the door. I'm like, hey, Ross, I don't mean to bother you, man, but I need to talk to you real quick. Cause I'm sitting there thinking, who's this person that's got blonde hair that he's with? And I'm like, there's no answer. I was like, hey, Ross, knocking. And then all of a sudden I open the door and I'm like, man, I hope I ain't catch him in an impromptu moment or anything. And then all of a sudden I open the door. There's nobody there. Nobody. And I'm looking around. I go, they didn't pass me because there's only one way up in those stairs. So I looked in the bathroom. I looked in Brett's room. There's nobody. So I go downstairs and I'm looking in the living room, the kitchen area. Then I go down to the next level to the washer and dryer. And I go down to the hallway all the way down. And I notice all the locks are still locked. He had like the regular doorknob lock. He had a deadbolt lock. He had a chain lock. He had all these locks on his door, and they're all locked just how I left them,
Huh.
And I was like, cause Brett wasn't coming back that night. He was staying with one of the other boys, and Ross was out with a friend of his and was going to stay out with one of his girlfriends out that night. And then I was like, I'm sitting there, what the heck, was I dreaming? I felt the tug. I heard the whispers. I heard the giggling, and I started thinking, one thing about Owen Hart was he was what we call a ribber. You know what a ribber is?
Like a jokester?
That's right. Plays a lot of ribs,
Yeah.
And the reason why we call them ribs is because, like they say, get it,
Yeah,
the analogy in the rib. Yeah. And then, and they always use this joke, that women was always a rib to a man because Adam had to give up a rib.
Oh,
So,
right.
And then, I'm sitting there thinking Owen was a ribber, and I saw blonde hair. As a matter of fact, when I start thinking about it, there was nobody else there, just that one person with blonde hair. And I thought, I look so much like my dad.
Mm-hmm.
What if Owen confused me from my dad? Because everybody called my dad Cuban, but when I was there, they called me Richie.
Right.
Or Junior, you know? And I was like, what if Owen mistook me as my dad? And I was like, and that was the second one. But the third one was when I was married. And that was on Mayfair Avenue in Oak Hill, West Virginia. And it used to be a nursing home. And I'm going to tell you a synchronicity here. And this is what my life's about, synchronicity. My whole life's about it. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why I'm doing the documentary. I'm showing the similarities, the synchronicities, and the differences between my dad and myself.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a lot of synchronicities in my life completely. It's just unreal. But this synchronicity, that nursing home, it used to be a nursing home, but it's a house that you rent. And I was renting a house from me and my wife, you know, in newborn son. And in the living room that had our TV room,
Mm-hmm.
that was actually the aunt that passed away, that the house that I stayed at with my cousin Daryl, that was her room in that nursing home.
Oh, wow.
In the TV room. And there'd be times the TV be on where we're in bed and my wife would go use the restroom and she'll say, April, she'll say, did you turn the TV off? I said, yeah, TV's off. She goes, what's on? So go turn it off. She goes, I'm not going in there. She'll run into bed. And I had to go in there and turn the TV off. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened a lot. You know, like I'll get up and start my day and the TV's on and I turned it off. Then there's a smell in one part of the house that smelled like something rotting. I checked everywhere, even in the basement, everything, to see if there's a dead mouse or something, or had to be something dead, you know, but there was nothing. As a matter of fact, when I got to the bottom of in the basement, there was no smell. Any other part of the house, it was just one particular room. It was a walk-in closet room.
Mm-hmm.
And that used to be a storage room. And that smelled like something rotting. And it lingered there for a while. And we used that as a computer room, you know, for our computer then. And then one time, me and my wife was talking in the TV room where my aunt used to be in. And my son is sitting in the threshold from the living room to the kitchen. On the other side of the living room is an encased porch. And while me and my wife's talking, we hear the screen door open. The screen door, which that screen door, you can hear it open, and the front door, and we hear the front door just swing open, and the screen door slam, boom, and we hear footsteps walking, and you go to another door to come into the center room, and then we hear some footsteps walking in the center room. And me and my wife's looking at each other like, who could be coming in my home, right? And then I see my son in the threshold, right, sitting in the threshold, you know, going from the TV room to the kitchen,
mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm like, and I start seeing my son and I see him look up. He's just a baby, you know. I see him look up. I'll hurry up and ran over there, you know, because that's my son. That's my baby. You know?
Sure, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm in defense mode all of a sudden. I run into the kitchen. I'm looking, you know, ready to fight, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't nobody there. And I look in the center room and the door's wide open. And I go out to the encased porch and that door's wide open. So I'm looking through all the rooms. It's a 5-bedroom house. Why we needed a 5-bedroom house, I have no idea, but we rented it.
Balling.
Yeah. And so I go through all the house looking, you know, and screaming, someone here better step out now, man, or I'm going to kill you. You
Smith
know?
and Wesson here.
Yeah.
These guns are waiting on you, son.
Yeah. I was in full defense mode.
Right.
But there was no one in the house at all. And that was the third time. We moved out. After that my wife had it. And she had gotten pregnant with our daughter then at that time. So
congratulations.
Then. And my kids are growing up now. My daughter's going to be 22. My son's going to be 25.
Sure. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And then, and I'm long divorced. Me and my ex.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It is a congratulations, you know.
Right.
We got married for all the wrong reasons.
Sure.
You know?
I mean, people tend to do that.
Well, I got her pregnant and I thought I was supposed to do the right thing, being Southern raised and being the mama's boy and being raised by my mom, because a lot of people don't realize that my dad really, after we traveled around with my dad when he was wrestling from 1970 until 1975, we was in Canada, and Dad and Mom talked about enrolling us in her school in Oak Hill because he didn't want us traveling around all the time, enrolling in school, because it was part of the territories then.
Sure.
And so she brought us back and enrolled me in school, and then the next year enrolled my sister. My dad had came in while I was still in kindergarten, and got my mom a trailer at Collingwood Acres on Lot 43. And then they lived there, but my dad would only be in like 1 week out of a year. Okay. So we only got to see my dad 1 week out of a year. And there was one time my dad came in, and I think he had, it was around Christmas time, and he got some time off, and he took us down to Puerto Rico to see the family, his mom, dad, and his brothers, and our cousins. And we celebrated Christmas down there in Puerto Rico.
Oh, cool.
And, yeah. And that was really the last family as my dad, my mom, my sister, and myself. Then Dad would be back again. Then in 1980, my dad would be in for 2 weeks, and he wanted to take me and my sister to Puerto Rico. Not my mom, just me and my sister. So he took us down there and brought us back, and then I'm going to tell you, this is kind of funny, but he knew, he suspected my mom was seeing somebody else, which she was, but my dad was also seeing somebody else because my mom wasn't stupid. My dad had to be staying with somebody, and so my mom wasn't stupid. He was seeing somebody else that would become my stepmother later on. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he would have a daughter and a son with that marriage, my brother and my sister from up in Canada.
Oh, cool.
And, but my mom went out with her best friend, and he took a taxi. He was taking him around to every single bar to try to catch my mom out with somebody.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now my mom and her best friend didn't go to a bar. They went to a friend's house. Okay. And my dad was trying to hunt them down. Right. But what my dad didn't know was the cab driver driving around was the man that my mom was seeing that would become my stepdad.
No way.
Yeah. My stepdad told me this, and I asked him, I said, was you scared? And my stepdad said, yeah, I was scared to death. He said,
he just said, like, oh yeah, where you want to go next?
That's all. And he said, Dad tipped him real good. And then when I was on tour with Dad one time,
oh no,
I told Dad about it. And then Dad, and this is long after, it's all, Dad's done remarried, my stepdad, my mom and my stepdad were remarried.
Right.
And then I was sitting there, telling my dad about it, and he laughed about it. He said, that's funny. He said, that's funny. And I was like, yeah, the very guy driving you around looking for mom, trying to cheat. You're trying to catch her with another guy.
And he gave him a good tip.
Like, gave him a good tip. Yeah.
Oh man.
Gave him a real good tip, for driving her, because he told him not to go nowhere.
Right.
And my stepdad, DJ, he sat there and he would just, which I'm going to let you know this too. I'm doing a reenactment on that.
Shoot, yeah, dude. Yeah. This is going to be an epic documentary.
Well, it's just, look, the reenactments may be 1 or 2 minutes long, ain't very long, just like ID channel. The interview would be more than you'll
hear words, and then you'll see kind of the dramatization.
Right. Yeah. And they have lines too.
Part
of it, and I didn't tell all the full story about, because I wanted to tell the important parts of my life. And like one of the actresses, she asked me if she can have some more scenes, and I was like, well, look, and she's like, well, you should have this. You should have this. I'm not going to have every aspect of my life. It's not about my life. It's about, this documentary is about the similarities and the differences between me and my dad. There's a lot of similarities, but there is some difference. I didn't leave when me and my wife separated. I stayed here to make sure I was involved with my kids.
Good for you.
I did not want my kids to sit here and worry about me. I wanted them to know that if they wanted to see Dad, that Dad's here.
Yeah.
The one thing that bothered me a lot was I didn't have that relationship with my dad, the father and son relationship. I have good memories.
Shout out. Same.
I have good memories from when I was born until 5 years old, and every time he came in, when the time we went to Puerto Rico for Christmas, and the time he took me and Cindy to Puerto Rico without my mom, And I wouldn't, after 1980, I wouldn't see my dad until after I graduated in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what he did? He said, he flew me up there as a graduation gift, and he's working for Emile Dupree's Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling. And he says, and we're in downstairs apartment with Dad, me, his tag team partner, Jerry Morrow. They were the Cuban Commandos at the time, and Frenchie Martin, which used to be the manager of Dino Bravo in WWF.
Mm.
And I just saw him on TV like a few weeks before I came up there. And Frenchie Martin, he talked like this, and I like Frenchie, may rest in peace. I like Frenchie. He was a big ribber too in the business.
Right.
And I tell you one rib he pulled on me. I told him my nickname was Chico. That's what the kids call me. My dad hated that. When I told my dad that, my dad hated it. And he said, that's a Mexican thing. That's not Puerto Rican or Cuban.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, it doesn't matter,
Right.
And then, it's just a nickname. I don't care. And Frenchie could call me Chico.
Oh, nice.
And he say, hey, Chico, you want to go to the gym, work out maybe 45 minutes, an hour? And I said, sure. I was in the bodybuilding, then working out. And then so I go with him to the gym in a place in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada called Bedrock Gym. And it's got a picture of Bam Bam from the teenage Bam Bam from Pebbles and Bam Bam show with him with the little wood stick and the big boulders around for weights.
Yeah.
And he, and I was like, oh, it's a pretty nice gym, it's a real good sized gym. And then I'm over there at the bench and start, working. He goes, I'll be right back. Okay. Chico, you keep doing the reps and everything. I'll be right back. Now he has a towel around his neck,
mm-hmm.
like, for sweat and stuff. And he's in sweats. He goes over to the counter, this nice looking blonde. Oh, a very nice looking young blonde's there. And he starts having a conversation with her, right? I'm still lifting weights over there. And I look over, he lights up a cigarette inside the gym. Frenchie. Smoking.
Nice.
Supposed to be working out. We're in
keeping it real.
Yeah. Talking to that girl. Talking to the girl. And then all of a sudden, I'm hollering. I say, hey, Frenchie, I'm done with the bench. I'm getting ready to do some bicep curls. He goes, go ahead, start without me. I'll be there in a couple of minutes. Keep do it, and I'm sitting there hollering. I said, Frenchie, and he kept saying, oh, yeah, go ahead, start without me. I'll be there in a few minutes. And then all of a sudden he come over and he has that towel and he's like, man, I had a really good workout today. He says, how'd you do today working out? Let's go back and get something to eat now. He didn't do anything but flirt with the blonde behind the counter.
Richie roll, or that's how he rolls.
That's how Frenchie rolls.
Frenchie.
Yeah, Frenchie Martin, maniac Frenchie Martin, and he's smoking a cigarette, and we'd be driving in the car and on road trips, and Jerry Morrow was French too,
Mm-hmm.
and but when he talked like this, he talked like a kid,
Sure.
And then Frenchie knew how he talked with that little bit of speech impairment with his dialect. And then Frenchie's like, Jerry, Frenchie's driving. Now I'm in the back seat with Jerry and Dad's in the passenger seat. He's like, Jerry, I'm my English is off. I'm trying to remember the number that comes after the number 2. And Jerry goes, it's twee. And Frenchie goes, no. I know how to say tree in English. I need to know how to say the word for the number that comes after 2. He says, twee. Jerry says that, and then he goes, Jerry, I know how to say tree in English. I need to know how to say in English the word for the number that comes after 2. I said twee. 1, 2, twee. 1, 2, twee.
Lord.
That was Frenchie Martin.
That's great. That's great. Well, Richie, we've said it all, bud. I appreciate all of these stories. I appreciate you promoting the documentary. Look for it this fall. And what's your production company called so people can find it?
You can find Mountain Man Productions on Facebook. I also have an actor's public figure page, Richie Acevedo, actor. I'm also on Instagram as Richie_Acevedo. I'm on Twitter, X, which is Cuban_assassin, and actual number 2. YouTube is Cuban Mano, all one word, and the actual number 2 at the end of it all together. And if anybody wants to contact me, they can contact me in any of those social media outlets. And please like the Mountain Man Productions. If you can also check out me on IMDb, which is International Movie Database.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a list of my movies and shows. But the movies I've done is The Mountaineer, Boxer versus Wrestler, Legends Mountain. I'm working on Cuban Assassins. I'm also in Wrestle Massacre.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Wrestle Massacre. I've been in a couple other films such as The Zombie Club, Halloween Heroes, Man That Went to Heaven. So you can find all that listing and stuff on my IMDb page. If you want to hit me up with my social medias. Do like Mountain Man Productions. It's a good way to keep track of what my own productions and my filming that I do.
Well said. And Richie, you are a fascinating human. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to Creepalachia, and also we're on TikTok, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. Let us know what you think about Richie's theory of Earthrise in the comments.
Please look it up on my YouTube channel and leave a comment. I like negative comments too, because I'm just want to see people's opinions.
Yeah. We had a good talk. I mean, there's a lot was said today. We appreciate you all joining us. And do you have a creepy Appalachian experience? I want to hear about it. Be sure to reach out to Creepalachia on Facebook or email me at creepalachia@gmail.com. And above all else, always remember, long live Appalachia.